All right, John, I want to talk with you today about data security, data privacy. A lot of the conversations that we're having, either, me that I have, the field organization, they're getting a lot of feedback on, now that prospects and customers are looking into AI agents and the agentic platforms, right? They're most over the LLM security. Like, they get it, right? Now they understand data leakage and everything, and you still can't paste text into an LLM and think it's 100% secure. But now they're building agents that run around in their business, and they're asking questions about is it still safe? Like, there's a lot of fear and doubt on what these things are going to actually do inside of the business. Are they just going to go crazy, or what's going to happen?
Yeah. So a number of times that I've been grabbed by our field organization pre and post sale, it's on this topic because it's enough kind of rattling your teeth to think, okay, I'm just going to push data into large language models that don't necessarily have the perfect track record of knowing how to properly steward data and honor copyright and doing the right thing there. And now I'm going to give those same models system access and give them vague directives on what I want them to do with that system access. So I think there's an actual, funny thing about so many of these agentic conversations that we're in, if you actually say it out loud, you sort of see just how patently ridiculous some of this stuff actually does sound, right?
Yeah.
If you have to articulate it the way I just did, which is, by the way, entirely factually correct, right? So let's give system agents, we didn't build unfettered access to our systems, and then give them vague direction on what they are supposed to do, expect them to do just that to our expectation, when in fact we know these things don't always perform to our expectation. And what's the security guy problem, right?
Yeah. The security guys have tried to limit access, since existence, because it's happened to everyone. I mean, maybe not you, because you're the administrator for every system, and I am for a lot. But like, when you get access to a system and you test it, like, oh, I wonder if I can go over here and see this feature or this data. That's a viable fear because of just data loss, right? You don't want certain access granted to someone that shouldn't have it, right? Least privilege.
That's right.
But how? So it's a real fear, but how do you handle it?
Well, we're going to have to get a little bit more. We're going to have to be a little bit more sober about what an agentic platform really can and should do with enterprise data and access. The notion of a general agent that is allowed significant access without sufficient guardrails, and I don't mean guardrails in the form of a prompt that you hope is honored. We're going to have to be a whole lot more careful than that. We can actually do this in such a way that you improve your security posture. We've done a lot of work to make that possible. I hate to say I show my age, but I show my age. And the reality is, a lot of agentic platforms are built by people who have not yet put software into an enterprise context and had to then support it for years and make sure that it is properly managing customer expectations of their data, privacy, security, et cetera. And of course, I've had no choice but to do that up there.
You think that matters? Like, I can't just have like ChatGPT build a software product for me?
Well, Scott, I know that that's a complete, supposed to be a softball. So I'll double check the swing, and the answer is it can certainly help. But if you are not in control, then who is in control? What is in control? And is that even allowed in your organization? Because no one's going to hold the large language model accountable. They will hold you accountable. So you've got to ensure that the illities and the covenants and all of those things that you've established with your customers, regulators, your boss, your company's policies, whatever they are, that's your responsibility. So you can certainly get help, but you really are responsible for this. And so definitely get help wherever you can and wherever you can, respectfully, right? Responsibly, but you are on the hook for this.
Personally, right? So like the
Oh, yeah.
CISOs or whoever's in charge, if you don't have a CISO, you do have to have the highest level of security person that signs off on this thing. Yeah, they're personally liable for this stuff.
There are. Yes. And by the way, globally, governments are only getting more precise about establishing liability to the individual, even criminal liability to the individuals involved in organizations. So this is not the fear-mongering session. This is actually you can improve your security posture even in the light of delivering an agentic, amazing AI-driven platform. But you've got to be super thoughtful about it. And you've got to recognize some pieces that I think in this early rush to market, a lot of platforms, not us, I mean, we've been in market for 4 years already, but there are plenty of situations where we're seeing like, wait a minute, they're missing that piece, right? And we don't have to do that in that other product. Well, that's a deficiency in the other product, right? That's not a good thing. That's how are you going to handle that then, right? Kind of thing.
So how do you make it better? So you said that will improve the security. So if you just say like, okay, baseline 0 is today, IT guy, CISO, whoever is looking into this, like how do you make it better from today?
Yeah. So let's take the surface area, if you will, of concerns into 3. First is the external cyber attack, classic, the one we focus most of our attention on, which is actually not where most of the breaches occur, but they're the most celebrated. There, you basically just have to make sure that whatever platform you are interacting with, AI or traditional, has all of the right best practices of SaaS and cloud security that you need. And you may need to vet certain aspects of them, but by and large, we know what that looks like. We know what good looks like there. And you just have to make sure that that organization is following those right practices. And of course, things like SOC 2 are good examples of how you make sure you do that. The other one that I guess is important, I'll talk about I think the biggest one last, is the regulatory and compliance aspect. There are a set of things that even if you're not that nervous about it, someone else is, they wrote a regulation, you have to do it this way, and therefore you have to do it this way, right? You can't, this is the non-optional kinds of things. And of course, there are standards bodies that establish certain things like a PCI, that is what I'm talking about here. But then there's also your own company policy around, or EU policy around data residency and things like that. So you're going to have to make sure that this isn't even an AI discussion, but it'll definitely have to do with it as you wonder about, I'm expanding the access to data within my organization, providing it to AI-based platforms. Am I still owning up to the covenants I made through those regulatory bodies and those compliance and even internal policy? All that's important. Again, a mature platform will have sorted out how to make sure that we do the right thing there, we do not do the wrong thing, and we can prove it, because the prove it part, especially in the second bucket, is actually the most important piece, right? I mean, of course, doing it is the most important, but you can't actually prove you did it unless you have a record of it and that is defensible. And in a very vaguely directed AI-based system where there isn't sufficient logging and access controls and precision, you don't have that audit log. And the first 2 are nothing compared to the actual risk and surface area that is exposed via internal users who are either accidentally or maliciously leaking data, right? And in fact, that's what You talk to any of the folks in cybersecurity world, we spend most of our time tooling up the, protect us from the hackers. And in fact, most of the data is leaving the organization through the internal employees. And again, it could be accidental or it could be on purpose. And there, a platform like an agentic platform that is capable of outcomes, is capable of interacting with systems on users' behalves, is capable of doing all these things. It actually has the opportunity to improve the security posture if done right. The number one challenge that we have is that we end up with people are the integration strategy today. Well, if they're the integration strategy, they have to have access to all of that equipment, all that software on their desktop, even on their laptops that are at home. And there's a tremendous amount of exposure to access information and to leverage information that is not necessarily needed for that particular job or task they're doing, and yet they have access to it. And there are teams of people in most of the larger companies that are just there to try to vet, does this person really need access to this app? And the yes rate is something like 99% in those teams. Mm-hmm. And it is because, it's super sensitive. There's lots of, scary data in there, but that person does need it to do this task. And then of course we don't know how long they'll need it. We don't know how long, we don't keep up with it very well. So the exposure to systems to your end users is the number one way that either by accident or by malicious act, your internal threat is the largest of the three.
Yeah. So that reminds me. So when you automate things like an employee workflow using, there's platforms like Zapier, make.com, there's got to be, if this, then that, there's got to be dozens of these where a person is automating their own job, but they have to have access to all of those systems, right? And the right level of access.
That's right.
Because I've built some of those with the other platforms, and I'm always wondering, like, man, I have admin access to everything, right? And I'm like, this seems, from my perspective, it's easy to get done. But if someone is trying to automate something where they don't have access, and you're always like elevating privileges and things like that. So how is what you're talking about different than when people are building like a Zapier workflow?
So in a way it is not, and then in a way it is in a scary. So we're nervous even in the Zapier example. The typical CISO is like it's a grinding on the chalkboard to hear when I hear. So how many of my people have connected my stuff that I am responsible for making sure is clean and does not have malicious either exfiltration of data or injection of whatever? How many people have connected it to that thing? How well have we vetted that thing? How much do we know about that thing? By the time a company like a Zapier reaches this status and the stature they have, we're pretty sure that they're not in the their business model is not to infiltrate companies and extricate data from them. But we don't have the nuanced difference about, well, what about that little AI company that just started up and they're not charging me anything, and they're doing all this crazy stuff. I'm trying to put all of this stuff together. I got all this really neat stuff. I'm interconnecting all of these things, and they don't ask me for money, or the money they ask me for doesn't even cover the AWS bill they probably have. Well, Scott, you and I have been around a long time. We've had this conversation before, right? If you're not paying for it, you're not the customer.
You're the product.
You're the product.
If it's free, yeah. But do you think? I mean, it's viable. Do you think that's really happening? Where one of these AI agents that is, even if it's not free, even if they fool you, like it's only $5 or something like that a month, and you put in your credit card. If you can sign up for it, you probably don't know the security behind the service.
Let's just say that you probably haven't fully vetted the security, and you haven't read carefully the SOC report, and you haven't made sure that the SOC audit was done by a reputable firm, and you don't actually know what a pen test report, high, medium, and low severity would actually look like. But that's sort of beside the point. It's not like, by the way, that I think that we don't have any current knowledge of this particular company in the AI agent space is literally in the business of trying to do that. But you and I, from past experience in other businesses, when we were doing work in mobile security, there absolutely were weaponized applications. There were companies that were built. They built a huge ecosystem.
People didn't
users.
believe us.
Right. They built a massive following. These apps did, and then either the original author or an acquirer weaponized that app, and it became malware. Now that it's got millions of people using it, those people never paid for it. There had to be a reckoning someday where the application developer had to eat at some point. And instead of those $5 a month in ad revenue that wasn't quite getting it, he got a check for $100,000 from some company. He said, sure, there it is. And now they've injected malware into it, and every one of those users automatically updated. There are countless examples of this in we just talked mobile, but there is no doubt that agent platforms, because they're even more, right? At least we got a sandbox on a mobile device. We're talking about, hey, agent, I want you to interact with my HCM and my CRM, and I want you to access all this data out of SharePoint, and I want you to do all this cool stuff for me. And don't do anything else, okay? And only do it the way I really want you to. And don't, I got a whole bunch of rules that I'm supposed to follow, and I'm not telling them to you or anything, but please do that, okay? Make sure you do all that too. Mm-hmm. We're just not being serious about data security if that's sort of how we're doing this right now.
One of the last conversations,
we're not gonna have good outcomes if we don't get our hands around this.
Chris and I talked about all the different agents a couple of episodes ago. Mm-hmm. And there's a website that listed them all, and it categorized all, this agent does this. Yeah. There were over 800 agents. There's no way you could vet the security of 800 agents, right?
No, and don't grab all 800 at a time. Grab only the ones you need, and get to know that. But again, I it's so easy to do the whole fear mongering and all that stuff in security, and I'm actually not trying to do that. I'm trying to tell you what is likely to be the case if you're not careful, and you should not do that. The positive here is do this responsibly, and you improve your security posture. And by that, I mean, yes, giving access to AI agents that interact with your systems has a potential downside. But if you're working with a well-established firm that has its pen test reports, that you can clearly tell is in business to actually produce an income and is expecting you to pay for it, because in fact, that's how they fund the operation, not you're the product, but you are the customer.
Yeah.
And that entity has the background in security and in being responsible for customer data. So you can be confident that that is in fact their mission, to protect your data, not to disclose your data. You've done half the battle. The other half of the battle is that everything you can get your AI agents to do, if you can get orchestrated activities among systems, that you no longer need to put access on all of those desktops where that accidental or malicious data loss happens, you've actually improved your security posture. If I could say, and of course I'll use Krista examples just to make them real. If I say, hey, you know what, guys? I don't need all our sales reps and I don't need all these partners to have access to our CRM. I don't need all of these third parties to have access to our CRM. I just need Krista conversations that they can have on their mobile, chatbot, texting, voice, or whatever. Krista will orchestrate all of that system activity. I trust Krista. I, by the way, directed Krista of what it is and isn't going to do, and what it isn't going to access, and for what purpose. And I'm confident that that is the way it's going to work. And by doing that, I've just reduced the amount of exposure to that CRM data, to that sales data, to that ERP, to that whatever. And I've still achieved a high level of sophisticated automation without, in fact, increasing my security risk. I've actually reduced it in the process. So we've got to find ways that we get a reputable, enterprise capable platform that can do all of that great AI orchestration and elegantly integrate systems and people. And that way we can start to pull back from all of this people as integration strategy, which is what creates all of this exposure to begin with. Because no one knows how to go no one's going no insider risk. How about that? Is going to go wandering through IT, trying to get access to a system that they don't actually need to access, unless they truly are actually behaving like an external hacker. We've got to find a way to take the business into software and execute the processes as software. When we do that, we only need to ask employees for their help, not give them access to everything and say, I hope that's enough for you to figure out how to do your job. Because that obviously is where we end up with giving them access to way too much that either, again, by accident or on purpose, it's like, ooh, that's interesting information. I'm going to download that right now. I could use that later. Or, you know what, I think I'm quitting this place. And these guys, you name it, it's happened. I hate to say it, honestly, because
because, the sales guy takes the customer list or the
and runs
IT
across the
guy
street to the competitor. And and you know what? I hate that it happens. It happens. So, which is why we have a security team within most companies. And and even if we don't have a team, someone's responsible or trying to be responsible with preventing or trying to prevent things like that. Well, let's not just go on purpose and do things that make it easier for that stuff to happen. Let's on purpose do things that make that harder for those things to happen. And that's what we're talking about here.
With that, the systems access, let's say a person has the system access and either, they read the data or they put it in their head or they take a screenshot or they download a file, right? The data is leaving, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between that and having an agent do this? Because the agent is going to have to go read the data, take the data, send it somewhere else, crunch it, calculate something, and then, write the updates back. What's the difference? Do people fear that the agent is using some external service and the data is leaving and coming back, or is that unfounded concern?
We get it all. Well, founded has to do with, are you working with software that's not buggy and that is not malicious intent and all of that? And I couldn't speak to that. But it absolutely comes up almost all the time. There is a version of, I hate to say it, they don't ask me this question, but they're trying to ask this question without asking this question. Tell
me the question that they want to ask that they're not, and then tell me what they do ask.
This is it.
Okay.
Am I a complete idiot if I just connect Krista to all my systems and just assume you guys are going to suck everything out of there and I have no control over anything anymore? Is that am I just being a total idiot for even thinking about this? Right? You're some cloud-based AI thing. I give you access to these systems and I have no idea what you're doing. Right? Am I a total idiot or just a bit of an idiot for that? That's the question they're trying to ask.
Yeah,
right?
Because they're concerned, because they're on the hook, right?
Yes. So the question they do ask, this is even better, because I mean they're doing right. They're doing this this verbal gymnastics of okay, so can you explain to me that if I give Krista access to a system, how does it know what it's allowed to get? And how does it know what it's not allowed to get? How do I tell it what to do and what not to do? Or how do I make sure, you know what I mean? Where does it go? What happens to it when you connect it? Does it just start doing stuff? To kind of, does anything just happen? Is it all just automatic at that point? And you can tell,
it's
right?
So they want to know if Krista is a super admin with all the encryption keys.
And is building a massive data lake with all of our data in its cloud so that it can start building AI that is trained on your data and others and has the ability to basically understand your business so well that is now intelligence it has over you, or that is available to their competitors. There is, and I guess given some of the early AI or early generative AI, commercially starting to be used kind of issues, there's some rational foundation for that maybe. But that is the way, that is the gymnastics that are usually I usually observe in the question. It's like, oh, you're trying to figure out if we're about to hook up a hose and get a massive low pressure on that hose and start pulling on. No, that's not how it works.
It's almost you should, if it comes up, you should ask the question. Okay, what you really want to know is Krista ransomware. Like, am I going to collect all this stuff and then, hey, exactly. I'm going to need $1 million.
Yep. Now that I've sucked every bite out of those systems, I am now going to lock those systems, or I'm going to trash the data in those systems, and I'll sell it back to you. Yeah, there's and do I expect that most of the vendors on the market are in fact malicious intent? Of course not. But I do struggle with the business model of those who are attempting to produce significant amounts of R&D and AI, LLM charges, building models. These are not inexpensive activities, and say, for $10 a month, I'll do all of that. Well, there's a reckoning there, right? They're either burning through VC money like crazy and you're going to pay a lot more later, or you are not the customer.
Yeah,
it's one of the two.
So in this line, what about DeepSeek, right? So it's, this showed up, for the past couple of weeks, and, everything's going to fall apart because it's so cheap. Oh, but it's from China. What's the guy that wants to know is Krista going to run rampant and make a copy of all his data? What does he want to ask about DeepSeek? What are his concerns?
Well, I think that there's a fair amount of, I don't want to say uneducated, but not completely thought through concerns with regard to DeepSeek. We're using a whole lot of Chinese goods here in the U.S., right? We're using a whole lot of stuff that's made in China.
Yeah,
the fact that an AI model
is
made in China,
this microphone,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's the fact that AI model was made in China is not all that, frankly, interesting. Now there's a U.S. relative to the rest of the world, especially China, with regard to who's gonna be the producer of the most sophisticated AI and who's going to do. I'm not ignorant of that at all, and of course, I want the U.S. to have fantastic technology and to enable unbelievable innovation, which, by the way, has been the role we've had in the modern age. I mean, we drive innovation globally in a massive way, but there are other countries that are doing some really interesting work, and collaborating with them is better than immediately being suspicious of them. Lots of reasons to be suspicious of certain activities of China, right? I'm just saying that particular thing, it's open source. So we have, it's one of the benefits of open source. Open source is lots of things to kind of chew through from a business perspective. But one of the things that we do get to kind of see for ourselves is, okay, I can download it. I can investigate it myself. I can stand it up myself. I can observe the network wire from it to anything else that it might be trying to talk to. So I can actually acquire the confidence that it is not, in fact, surveillanceware or yada, yada, right? Yeah. Decades ago, there were concerns that, someone could hide a bomb in the foreign car. This was legit in the news when I was a kid. This early years in the U.S., early 70s, right? U.S. automakers are dominant, and then here come these foreign cars that are now much more prevalent, and that concern gave rise to, our enemy could just stick a bomb in every one of those cars if they hit it all at one time. I mean, then there it is. Okay, I'm not exaggerating. That was absolutely a news report. So yeah, we can. Obviously, let's be prudent. And I did say myself, 10 minutes ago in this particular podcast, vet the companies that you're doing business with and make sure you understand their motivation and their business model and how they intend to be viable. You will need your vendor to make money. Otherwise, what you have today will be gone tomorrow or will be very different, right? So I'm right. I'm not trying to speak out of both sides of my mouth. I'm trying to say that is not necessarily, DeepSeek itself is not necessarily a threat. DeepSeek has taught all of us that there are better ways, cheaper ways to construct models. That isn't even all of that offensive to chip makers, because that's just going to enable those chips to achieve more. We're not about to cut the budget. That's the thing that's so strange and people don't recognize it. My dev team is doing 30, 40% more based on AI enabled coding assistants. I didn't cut 30% of my staff. I'm now getting more from those people. They became more valuable to me on a per person basis. They didn't become less valuable, and I'm getting more from the same based on some additional little investment, but it has a huge ROI. I'm all for it. And we keep going, right? And that doesn't mean we're not hiring additional people. Mm-hmm. We're hiring additional people with the expectation they're going to get even more done than the ones we've been hiring, right? I mean, same thing would be true in every facet here. We don't need to think about if it gets easier faster, then that makes it less valuable. No, that makes it more valuable if it's producing something of value, right?
Yeah. So from a value perspective, you were talking about the developers. So they're more efficient. So my question is, are at their skill level, depending on who it is, right? Junior, mm-hmm. Senior developer, are they more skilled or just more efficient? Like, does the coding assistant, does it upskill them or just make them faster?
So there's a facet of this that is, it upskills them. It makes them faster, but it still requires them to have an understanding and I don't want to say mastery, but it's pretty close to a mastery of whatever it is. They got to know what that code does and how. And because there are plenty of bugs in the code that gets generated. There's plenty of no, that's not going to work for us type reaction when you see a piece of code that AI generates for you. And a lot, what a language model is so much better than us at is it's not that its thinking skills are superior. It's not that it's not. It's faster for sure, and it has equal access to all of the training that it's exposed to. You and I are not exposed to the scope of content that any of the trillion parameter large language models have been. They have been exposed to literally terabytes more content than we have, even on subjects we are experts in, right? We've read a bunch of papers. They've read every paper. Right. We've seen 5 ways to do this particular thing, coding or otherwise. They've seen 500 ways of coding it. So what we get from them, if you call that a skill, right? If you call that that expanded awareness, if you call that a skill, then they definitely have that skill, and they definitely have it over us, if you will, because we certainly couldn't know we certainly couldn't have a tip of tongue, right? Because these things have equal access to all of that stuff. And biases or age of the information coming in and going, suppressing certain knowledge because I never didn't use it, whatever it is, for whatever reason, there's even a relevance to some of what I remember and a lack of relevance to the topic at hand. Some of what I remember, they don't have any of those fallacies. So when a more junior developer is sitting in front of an AI agent and helping on a piece of code that is, let's say, new to that developer, that expansive awareness that junior developer doesn't have is incredibly helpful, because it's going to point that person in directions that they never even thought to go. Now, how accurate, how correct, how well placed versus the rest of the software that's being built and all of that is actually its own hard problem, and it is not as easy for an AI model. And our engineer has got to understand it. And we've been telling, just like the comment we made about security a few minutes ago, we love the fact that our guys are using these AI models, right? We want that productivity. We want to see, and we want those other ideas, right? We don't want to be siloed to just our knowledge and experience about how to do certain things. We want everybody's and to be encompassed, and because the better idea may be outside of our known scope. But that's on you. You don't get to blame a model for you introducing a fatal flaw to our product. You are the one making that code commit, and it's the same thing all over again, right? So we're not going to be able to up level this from out of the development world. We can't just abdicate responsibilities to agents and say, well, the agent made me do it, or I just told the agent and it didn't follow my directions, so just shoot the agent. And that's complete. So we've got to come in all the way back to the top of this. There's incredible productivity and innovation and creation that can be unlocked from an agentic platform. We just have to recognize that there are prescribed things we have to make happen when we execute a business. We can't just have an agent just fuzzy, just go sort out how to run my company for me stuff. We've got a lot of work to do to make these things as effective as they can be. And then we've got a good set of guardrails and awareness we need to have about where we give them flexibility. We accomplished that. We got some unbelievable unlock, right? I mean, there really is. And it's a fantastic time to be in this particular moment in history, especially for guys like us, because we're literally right on the tip of this, and having seen what is possible years ago and trying to build something that'll help us get to where that could be, and to see these things falling in place at this particular moment. I've never timed a market, right? I mean, you and I have worked together for a long time. I've never timed a market. I feel really, really grateful for the fact that this is laying out the way and playing out the way that it is. So we're excited to help whoever's interested in really kind of taking it to that next level, because unfortunately, I think too many are going to sit and watch and start to act, where it's too late, they'll never catch up. And half of this is about learning and about doing and learning. It's not about waiting, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, with that call coming in, thanks, John. I really appreciate it. It's a great talk on security, and until next time.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everyone.